Hey everybody, it's Nick here with you. Welcome back to the Rock Album Review channel. And I thought it would be a fun idea to do a ranking video of the Foo Fighters albums from worst to best, in my opinion, as a fun way to kind of gear up for their new album called Medicine at Midnight that comes out on February the 5th. I've really dug the stuff that we've heard from the album so far, especially No Son of Mine and Waiting on a War. So, super pumped for the new Foo Fighters album coming out on February the 5th. So I thought, what better time to kind of take stock of the music that we've heard so far from the band and do a ranking video of their 9 existing studio albums from 9 to 1 here on the Rock Album Review channel. So before we do that though, I want to do a couple of honorable mentions from the Foo Fighters catalog that, they don't really apply to the full album kind of thing, the official album discography, but I do love them nevertheless. The first one being the Saint Cecilia EP from 2015. This came out on the heels of the Sonic Highway record in 2014, and this is one of my favorite things that the Foo Fighters have done in the last decade or so. I just love the songs on this, the title track, Saint Cecilia, Sean, which is just a super fun kind of punk rock song, as well as Iron Rooster and The Never Ending Side. There's only 5 songs in this, so they're pretty much all awesome, but it's not part of the official Foo Fighters album discography. You can only find it on vinyl. But it is definitely one of my favorite releases from the Foo Fighters. So honorable mention goes to Saint Cecilia. And another honorable mention to a full album that was part of a documentary project that Dave Grohl did in 2013 about the Sound City recording studio in LA, the Sound City Reel to Reel album. And all the Foo Fighters members feature on this album in some capacity, as well as, other heavyweights like Paul McCartney. You got Josh Homme on here, Trent Reznor, the list goes on and on. Rick Springfield, great song, The Man That Never Was. And like I said, this isn't part of the main Foo Fighters discography, but I love it and I think it's a great record. So honorable mention goes to Sound City Reel to Reel from 2013. All right, so let's get to the rankings for the 9 existing Foo Fighters studio albums. Like I said, this is just my opinions of my favorite records from the Foo Fighters. So coming in at number 9, we have Sonic Highways from 2014. And I do enjoy this album, but it was paired up with a documentary series that the Foo Fighters did on HBO, where they went to different kind of musical hubs across America and recorded a song in each city, kind of reflecting that city's musical vibe. And I really do love the documentary. I think it's fantastic. It's really kind of informative. It's really great to see them kind of gelling with the different musical vibes of each city. But I don't really think the record itself really gelled well for me. I think there's a little bit too much of an effort for Dave Grohl to try to fit the songs into the theme of the documentary, and I think some of it comes out a little bit clunky and a little bit awkward. There's great songs on this record, Something from Nothing, which is, one of my favorite songs to play on guitar, Feast and the Famine, In the Clear, Outside, with a great solo from Joe Walsh, but overall it just feels kind of awkward and doesn't feel quite natural for the Foo Fighters. I love the documentary, but I don't really love the album. So coming in at number 9 is Sonic Highways. And coming in at number 8, we have the most recent album from the Foo Fighters from 2017. It's Concrete and Gold. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some great songs on this album. La-Di-Da, Dirty Water, Make It Right, Run is great as well. There's some great heavy tracks, some more poppy tracks on this album. But the thing about it that turns me off is the production. It's produced by Greg Kurstin, who is a super popular and well-known producer who's worked with everybody. He's worked with pop stars. He's worked with rock stars. He's worked with everyone in between. And he's a great producer, but for some reason, this album just sounds really harsh to me. It sounds really abrasive when I listen to it, which kind of lessens my enthusiasm for this album. Like I said, I love the songs, but the production is just too harsh, and I have fingers crossed that the new album, Medicine at Midnight, which is produced by Greg Kurstin once again, isn't quite as harsh as this album, but we'll see. But for now, number 8, Concrete and Gold. Coming in at number 7, we have Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace from 2007. A fantastic record by all accounts, but not really near the top of my favorite Foo Fighters albums. It does have some banging tunes like The Pretender and Let It Die, Erase and Replace. I really love Cheer Up Boys, Your Makeup Is Running, which is just kind of a fun, classic Foo Fighters pop rock song. But there are some middle-of-the-road kind of things that happen later on in this album that I don't really enjoy. The Ballad of the Beaconsfield Miners, which is, a fun little instrumental. Whenever bands put that kind of thing on an album, it just kind of feels like a wasted exit track to me. Home, the final track, is cool, but it kind of drags on. And I do like some of the more middle of the road tracks, but it feels like they're just kind of treading water. And they definitely picked up the steam again on the follow-up to this record in 2011 with Wasting Light. But in spite of the hit songs like The Pretender, I'm still going to put Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace in at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have the Foo Fighters double album opus from 2005. We have In Your Honor. Now, this is a double album with 2 sides. The first side has the full-on electric full band side. The second side is the acoustic album. And as far as I'm concerned, the acoustic side of this album is probably one of the best things the Foo Fighters have ever done. The fantastic production, the fantastic songwriting, Dave Grohl's voice on it sounds amazing. And the rock side is good as well, but it feels kind of paint by numbers. I really love songs like, the title track, In Your Honor. I love No Way Back. I love Resolve and DOA. But there's some of the other songs on it just feel kind of by the numbers Foo Fighters. And although they're enjoyable, it just doesn't feel like they're really working at their full potential. But on the acoustic side, the creativity is definitely flowing and they're definitely doing cool things. But to balance out, it doesn't quite make it to the top of my list. So at number 6, we got In Your Honor. In at number 5, we have the album from 2011 called Wasting Light. Now, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to, I guess, latter era Foo Fighters. This song came out in 2011, but it feels like the start of the Foo Fighters becoming a little bit of a dad rock band. I know that's a bad term, but I'm in my 30s. I realize that I might not be on the cutting edge of everything musical in 2021. I felt like, this was them at their best. I felt like they kind of came back from some of the weaknesses of the previous decade to kind of set themselves up for another decade of being the Foo Fighters, kind of moving into another aspect of their career. And kind of what a way to do it when you think about it. It opens with Bridge Burning, which is one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs. It just kicks so much ass. I love Rope. White Limo, obviously, is White Hot. I love that song. Arlandria, Back and Forth, and Walk as well. So it is a really solid record, and I feel like it is kind of the best record of the current Foo Fighters era, which I feel like we're still in. They're getting a little bit older, but they're still rocking, and it still sounds great, and I really, really love this record. So in at number 5 is Wasting Light. In at number 4, we have One by One from 2002. This is kind of classic Foo Fighters. I was just speaking about, how we're in this kind of current era where they're a little bit older. This is still the Foo Fighters when they're young and vibrant. They're coming out of the 90s where they were releasing great music. The first 3 albums are obviously classic, and then they come to 2002 and they release this album. And I remember the first time I heard All My Life on the radio, I couldn't believe it. I didn't even know it was the Foo Fighters at first with that chugging riff at the beginning, and then it just breaks out. I actually saw them live on this tour. I think it might have been 2003. It was still the One by One tour at Arrow Hall in Toronto. I don't know if any of you out there have been to that venue. It was insane. It was a packed venue. They came on stage. They started doing All My Life. And once the band kicked in and the curtain dropped, the crowd went nuts. Me and my friends were all separated. We kind of had to pull each other out of the pit. It was absolutely, it didn't matter where you were standing in the crowd. It went absolutely nuts. And that's actually featured in one of the Foo Fighters DVDs. I forget what it's called. The title escapes me right now, but it's a fantastic DVD if you want to see how crazy that show was. So I do have some very fond memories of One by One. It came out right as I was going into university, so it was kind of a soundtrack to that whole thing. And it's awesome. You got All My Life, you got Low, you got Have It All. I really love Disenchanted Lullaby, and I know the band themselves do not really count this record that high, but I certainly love it, and it still has the charm of early Foo Fighters. So coming in at number 4 is the 4th studio album from Foo Fighters. It's One by One. All right, so now we're going to get to the top 3. These ones should be no-brainers, but you might be surprised by the order that I put these records in. So in at number 3, we're going to put the debut album, self-titled, from Foo Fighters from 1995. Obviously classic, but it's just Dave Grohl on his own. It was recorded in the aftermath of the death of Kurt Cobain and the breakup of Nirvana. He got into the studio, did all the instruments himself, and made a classic album. And it's kind of like an anomaly in the Foo Fighters canon because it's still a rock album, but it definitely has more of a Nirvana influence, and it doesn't quite have that blockbuster rock band quality, you know, that stadium rock quality that, you know, Color and the Shape and There's Nothing Left to Lose and everything that followed has. But there's just something, there's a charm about this record that I really love. It takes me back to you know, a time when I was younger, so it's always got you know, kind of a good association there for me. And obviously the songs, you know, This Is a Call, I'll Stick Around, Big Me, Alone and Easy Target, I Love Good Grief and Floaty and For All the Cows, Ecstatic. It just goes on and on. There's no surprise that this record would be in the top 3. So number 3, we got Foo Fighters. In at number 2, we have an album that you would think would be at number 1. At least I think most people out there would put this one as number 1 on their list. But for me, it's still awesome. It's still the best, but it's got to come in at number 2, and that is The Color and the Shape. Now, why is this number 2? Well, I suppose you'll know more when I get to number 1, but The Color and the Shape is the blueprint for Foo Fighters. This is the album. If you're saying, you're going to say to somebody, hey, you know, you want to be a fan of the Foo Fighters, how do you get into the Foo Fighters? You give them The Color and the Shape. You know, it's got Monkey Wrench, it's got Hey Johnny Park, it's got everything. Wind Up, My Poor Brain, My Hero, Enough Space, Walking After You. Everything on this album is fantastic, and it's the Foo Fighters, their first real band effort, the first time that Dave Grohl and the guys, you know, Nate Mendel and Pat Smear and William Goldsmith, who they kicked out of the band on this album because they didn't like his drumming. You know, just them getting together and finally making a full Foo Fighters record. And it is fantastic. I do love it. It is one of the greatest albums of all time, but it's only in at number 2, so we're going to put The Color and the Shape. And coming in at number 1 on my rankings of the Foo Fighters albums is the third album from 1999 called There Is Nothing Left to Lose. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this album is really special to me. The first thing is that it's the songwriting and the production and the singing on this album. It's still a rock album. You got songs like Stacked Actors, and you got Breakout, you got Generator, you got Gimme Stitches, but there's just a soft side to this album, a really tender side to Dave Grohl that we hear on this album on songs like Aurora and Ain't It the Life and MIA and Next Year. And it's just, there's a vibe about this album. Dave Grohl's voice sounds amazing. He's still got a little bit of that hard edge, but he can really sing on this album. The melodies really just, they mean something to me on this album. And that goes into another reason why I like it, is that it came out at a time when I was just really impressionable. This came out when I was in high school, the middle of high school. It was the first Foo Fighters album that got me into them. I had heard them before, seen their videos on Much Music, heard their stuff on the radio, but Nothing Left to Lose is the first album that I really was like, I gotta go buy that. And it came at a time when I was just, you know, experiencing all the emotions of being a teenager, and when I listen to it, it kind of still takes me back to that. And, you know, as I said, the songwriting is fantastic, the production is awesome, and it's just my favorite. So I know it's not The Color and the Shape, which is the album that I know a lot of people will put in at number 1, but gotta be number 1 for me. There is Nothing Left to Lose. And that is the rankings of the current 9 existing Foo Fighters albums. For me, just my opinion, but I want to know which albums are your favorites. So let me know in the comments. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Make sure to hit the thumbs up so you let me know that you like this video. Make sure to tell your friends. Make sure to listen to the new Foo Fighters album called Medicine at Midnight, coming out on February the 5th. I'm definitely going to be doing a review for that, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video here on Rock Album Review.